is touching the truth.
Hello, welcome to God Frequency. Today we're going to be discussing the Avengers Endgame. This is going to be part 2. If you haven't viewed the first video I did on this, you may want to check that out before viewing this. First of all, the title of this movie, the title of this podcast is going to be Is Thanos God? This is Avengers Decoded. But when you're looking at the aspect of God, God has no physical form. A lot of people have actually gotten that, don't understand that. God is a frequency, someone like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. God can be anywhere at any time, many different places at the same time. This is God. The same way you can have Wi-Fi going on the house, and you may have several different devices hooked up to the Wi-Fi. They all have access to that same Wi-Fi signal. So you need to think of God as the same way. Think about Wi-Fi with a personality or a conscience. That's probably the best way I can describe it. God has a way of downloading what he wants to get across into people to get things done. And you saw that in the movie Avengers Endgame. In this movie, Thanos was actually doing the work of God. So in a sense, he was God in this movie. Yes, Thanos. There were a few things that we might find interesting in this movie. Look. First, let me say this: there were a lot of things that I did not like about this movie, but this movie was excellent. This movie was excellent. I mean, there was for all of you who are enlightened and can understand how these movies play out and know the story behind the story behind the story behind the story, you understand that like they were dropping a lot of gems in this movie, a lot. I mean, I can talk about this movie for days. I don't know how many Endgame decoded. This is part 2 now. I can break this down. There may be 5 of these, maybe more. Man, we're going to be talking about this movie, just the general public, for years to come. I've never seen a movie basically touch on so many things and in such a short period of time. The only movie that I can think of that comes close to this, it was The Matrix. It was The Matrix. As I said before, The Matrix took on religious proportions. It was another one with what's the other one? It's skipped me, but either way. So let's get back to the movie. Thanos, playing the role of God, came to bring change. This may throw a lot of people off about God. Why? A lot of you have been watching these movies from the very beginning when actually Iron Man kicked off the MCU. It wasn't really even Iron Man. It was actually Blade. Blade actually kicked this thing off. If we want to be completely accurate, but a lot of people would actually put Tony Stark as the face of the MCU. And now in this movie, a lot of you would think, why would God play basically, why would God be in the form of Thanos? Let me ask you this. For all you Christians and Muslim or religious people, could a non-believer do the work of God? Could a non-believer do the work of God? Now, I'm going to say yes. We've seen this a few times in the Bible. Some people come and they may have had a shady past, but they come into the Word of God. Now, you need to keep this in mind. The whole time Thanos was on the mission to get the Infinity Stones, he thought he was doing a good. His intentions were ultimately for good, for righteousness in his mind. Was he right or wrong? That's up to you to decide on what side of the fence you're on. But Thanos didn't look at himself as evil. That's very important here, people. And honestly, those are the best characters. Another character who's very much like that is Victor Von Doom. He doesn't look at himself as evil. But the thing with Thanos, is Thanos God? I'm going to make the case that he is. And so he was doing the work of God. He came in, and this is another thing. In the beginning of the movie, he referred to himself as I am. And at the end of Avengers Endgame, he says, I am inevitable. Now, that's a play on God. God was asked a question of who he was, and his response was, I am. He's telling you who he is in this movie. Now, with Thanos, we need to understand what is it. First, let me say this. Thanos is a combination of two names, Thoth and Kronos. Thoth was a master teacher. Kronos was the father of time. He controlled time, who ate his own children. He sacrificed his children. Okay. Thanos was showing aspects of all of those. Yes, he was. Now, when we're dealing with this, when we're dealing with the notion that Thanos is God, he has an opposing force. So if Thanos is God, that would mean the Avengers are the opposing force and would be evil. And to a lot of Christians, he basically on the side of Satan. Thor is actually playing the role of Satan in this movie. Yes. Look, Thor wasn't one of my favorite characters, but he's very enjoyable. I love his character. But he in this movie, he's playing the role of Satan, the Thunder God. And that's another thing. A lot of these movies are taking the characters or the mythos from Egyptian mythology. I think Thor is actually a black god by the name of Shango. Look him up. He's the black god of thunder. Has a hammer. It's a blatant ripoff. But that's neither here nor there. But Thor is playing the role of Satan. In the Bible somewhere, look, I didn't. You're gonna have to look this up and help me out in the comments here. But in the Bible, there's a that when God comes, he will be fighting Satan. He'll go against Satan. God will come from the sky, and he'll be fighting Satan. Satan will be missing one eye. Thor, it has one eye. He has one eye. In the movie, he has two eyes. One of the eyes are artificial, given to him by Rocket Raccoon. Okay. Thor playing the role of Satan, and his team. They're all on his side. The Avengers. Now we also have even a Star Lord. I think it was the movie before the Avengers Endgame. They asked the Star Lord, "Who did you serve?" And he mocked, and he scoffed at him. He mocked him. He said, "What am I supposed to say? Jesus?" As though he doesn't worship Jesus or he's against Jesus. I mean, yeah, they're putting all types of subliminals in these movies. But also, let me say this. Also in the Bible, God will come from the sky. They've been programming everyone in these movies. Anything that's coming out of the sky is evil. We're afraid of everything that's coming down from the sky, whether it's meteors, aliens. I mean, everything. Now, Thanos comes from the sky. And this is the thing. In the Bible, they reference the four horsemen. God comes along with four horsemen. Those four horsemen are the Black Order, the team of Thanos. They are the four horsemen who bring destruction on earth, who fulfills the word of God, which is Thanos. This also the Thanos. How these movies do? You're seeing this movie being perverted. They're telling stories from the Bible through the eyes of Satan, through the opposite force of God. Well, this is the thing. God can work through anyone. He can work through anyone. A person can have the most terriblest past, and God can come into their lives and change their lives just like that. And now they're on the side of God. Us as humans, lesser beings, we get stuck on the past. Oh, if this person started off this way, he's no longer worthy for God. Let me ask any of you this. Regardless of your past, regardless, you can give your life to God at any time. At any time. Don't let anyone ever tell you anything other than that. I'm going to help you with that. Like I said, God is a frequency. You repeat this. I don't care what your past is like or what you've been through. You can turn your life over to God at any given time. You can accept Him. Log on to it. Log on to that free Wi-Fi signal that God is pushing out to everyone. The only thing you do is have to accept it. Ask yourself. Say it out loud. What do I have to do to make myself a suitable host for you, God? What do I have to do to make myself a suitable host for God? The answers will come to you. The answers will come to you. And your life will change just like that. That's all you have to do. There's no code for this Wi-Fi signal. You just have to ask and you shall receive. God is beautiful. He is awesome. Now back to Thanos. He comes down with the Black Order. And this is the thing. When God comes, He doesn't always come pretty. He doesn't always come pretty. You know, you're looking at Thanos. He's the guy with that sack chin. I think that's what Star-Lord called him. You know, Thanos, if you read the comics, Thanos was considered ugly by his people. He was considered ugly. His mother tried to kill him. He was an outcast. Okay? But guess what? God saw fit to choose him. He saw fit to choose him. And another thing, this frequency of God, he is within all of us. The human body is a vessel that can contain more than one frequency. You have the same way you have the ability to log on to God frequency. You have the ability to log on to the opposite force frequency. Oh yeah. And guess what? That may look pretty. That's the thing. This thing isn't cut and dry, black and white. God can use anyone. His opposing force can use anyone. He can use the ugliest. I'm talking about God. He can use the worst of us to do the greatest things. Or the opposing force can use the most beautifulest one of us, or all of us, and do terrible things. This thing can take over a culture. It can take over a culture and destroy it or uplift it. So was Thanos God? He was doing the work of God. He was doing the work of God. Now, in Avengers Endgame, when Thanos actually snapped his finger, and everyone started to evaporate, Doctor Strange looked at Tony Stark and said there was no other way. You know, he was actually trying to explain why he gave the time stone to Thanos, because he looked at alternate realities and said, out of 14,605,000 attempts and 14,605,000 alternate realities, there was only one in which they were able to win. That's very significant. Very significant. Because when you're dealing with alternate realities, and you're dealing with they're actually dealing with magic, black magic in this movie. That was very significant. Out of 14,605,000 different realities, there was only one that they actually were able, and in that reality, it was the most, it was just laughable how they picked, it was that reality. Everything that happened in that movie for them to win, it was almost ridiculous. It started off with the rat running across the keyboard and releasing Ant-Man. It started with the rat releasing Ant-Man. Okay? Now, that's the universe that happened to win. What are the chances of that? The rat running across the keyboard and clicking the correct amount of keys to release Ant-Man. What are the chances of that? And then they ended it with Tony Stark picking the time gems off of the gauntlet and Thanos not noticing this. Listen, that was the universe that won. Now that's very important, because we need to understand when you're talking about intentions, this is very important. You can use this in your everyday life. Intentions are important. There's always a chance. When you put out your intentions, it has to happen. It has to happen. The only thing that can stop it is you. So when the Avengers, that opposing force, said, we're gonna get these time stones. We're gonna make sure this happens. We're gonna set out to reverse everything that Thanos did. It has to happen. They had to win. There was a reality where that was possible. A very slim one. But there's always that chance that it can happen. You can use that in your everyday life. If there's something that you really want, set your intentions to make it happen. And it will fall into your, and it will happen. No, and this is the thing. Just as unbelievable as that rat running across that keyboard and releasing the Ant-Man, something just as ridiculous can happen in your life to make something happen. Yes. The power of intentions, of your intentions and your words. Words have power. Thanos told you from the very beginning, he says, I am. He told you he was God. He told you he was God from the very beginning. He made no secret of that. What was the first thing that Loki told him before he killed him? He said, you'll never be a god. Loki was considered a god. The god of mischief. He killed him. He killed him. The movie was excellent. Look, the race aspect that I touched on in the first video, what they were doing in this movie, there was a lot to do with race, a lot, and I can get into that again later, but I'm not going to do it in this video. But it was and also another aspect of this was the frequency of women. They had been pushing this female agenda. I haven't really decided if this is good or bad. I'm seeing what's happening in the world with the women and social media. It's a mess, So in a way, they're actually they may be resetting this because it's a mess. They were with Brie, Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, I think her name is. She was would I have picked a better person, another person for the role? Yeah, I would have picked a better person. And number one, like I said, I wasn't gonna make this about race. She should have been a black woman. A lot of you may not know this, but the original Captain Marvel, well, from the Marvel universe, Shazam was actually the original Captain Marvel. But in the Marvel universe, it was a black woman, Monica Rambeau. She was actually in the Captain Marvel movie, and she was her friend, the pilot who had the daughter. That they basically referenced her, but she was nothing like that. Monica Rambeau, she was actually the true Captain Marvel. She should have been in that movie, and for her to be portrayed the way she was, it was almost a disgrace. It was almost a disgrace. It was a disgrace. You should check that out in the comics. They've actually battled, and she wiped the white Captain Marvel. Took her out to lunch. She destroyed her. And basically conceded that she was Monica Rambeau was the true Captain Marvel. She was pretty. She was badass. She was awesome, and she had an afro. She had an afro, and in this movie, she was portrayed as a single black mom. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not who she was. You know, that how they even replaced her with that. That a lot of that, you know, for her character to even be shown, for her to get a movie, she no one was looking for this movie. As far as Captain Marvel, you know, she came in. You know, she was actually the only character. Well, to have as big of a role as she did in Avengers Endgame, you know, when she appeared, it was a pretty awesome scene when she came out the sky, and the ships started shooting up in the air to blast her out. She came in and flew in and flew through the ships and destroyed them. You know, the crowd didn't respond at all. If that was Thor doing that, the theater would have went nuts. They would have went crazy. But there was no energy behind that woman because it's been her even being inserted into the Marvel universe has been forced. A lot of people are seeing through that. Hopefully they'll get that character together because she's a good character. It's she, you know, I would have chosen someone else to play the role, but as far as Captain Marvel, it's she. I would like to see more of her. They can get the stories together. But back to Thanos. His when he is doing the work of God. The Black Order, Corvus Clave, Proxima Midnight, Ebony Maw, the Black Dwarf. Those are the four horsemen. Those are the four horsemen. Also, I wanted to touch on at the end of the movie. No, this was at the beginning, after he snapped his finger. We saw the Avengers hunt down Thanos. They saw he was defenseless and crippled from destroying the time stones. Well, they didn't know it at the time, but they came in. Well, they knew it at the time. They came in and they chopped his head off. What world are we in where that's acceptable? There's no taking him in and locking him up. They're just going in there. They ran into his house. This is after the Avengers lost. They came in to his man's house and killed him, chopped his head off. How is that righteous? How is that righteous? Now, Thanos. This is another thing. Gosh, I keep going back to race on this, but I think this is very important. The Thanos, after he snapped his finger, he went to a planet. The planet he was on. If any of you ever read the comics, look, this is the thing. One of the things I hate about this movie is how they take the stories from the comics, and they flip and they switch it up. The story in the comics, the Infinity Wars, it is much better than anything MCU can come up with. Keep in mind, MCU are getting all of their material from the comics. That Avengers Endgame story, in the comics, is an Infinity Gauntlet. It's a beautiful story. They take certain characters out, put certain characters in, twist the story around. They take different aspects from different stories and put them together and make a totally different story, and calling it the Infinity Wars or the Infinity Gauntlet. But it's not. This is a totally different story. In the comics, Thanos wins. He goes to a planet and he becomes a farmer. Thanos becomes a farmer. Farmer Thanos. Okay. Now, let me tell you how this frequency of God works. He's multi-dimensional, the frequency of God. God. Remember, God speaks. He doesn't just speak through words. He speaks through signs and symbols. So if you have the eyes to see, you can see God in pretty much everything. Everything. Keep this in mind. God can come into anyone at any given time at multiple places. In multiple different places. He's not limited by time or space. So when they say God is with you, he's always with you. He doesn't go anywhere. So let me say this. He speaks through the culture. Right now, I thought this was a very interesting fact that Thanos is a vegetarian. He's vegetarian. Now, and I'm sure someone's going to pull up some comic. I don't even know if it exists. Pull up some comic where Thanos is sitting at some table and he's ripping the leg off some baby doe. But Thanos, and you see in the movie, he was eating the vegetation from the planet he was on and boiling it, living off the grid, essentially. But he went to a planet. The name of the planet was 0259S. 0259S. And that's very important. Let me tell you how wonderful and awesome God is. 0259S. If any of you are familiar with the gematria, it's when you take numbers and turn them into letters, or letters and turn them into numbers. So the letter A will be 1. The letter B will be 2. The letter C will be 3, and so on. Gematria. It's a very interesting language. You can get a lot of good information from that. Those letters, they're mixed up, but it only spells one thing. Sabi. Sabi. Write it down, look it up. 2 is B, 5 is E, 9 is I, and the S. Sabi. Dr. Sabi, if any of you aren't familiar with him, he was a holistic doctor. He actually cured AIDS. He was deal with a lot of influential people. Did Gregory, Michael Jackson, Lisa Left Eye. A lot of different people. And he talked about how Liz Taylor, a lot of different people have dealt with him. He actually went to court. They tried to the United States government took him to court, and he had to prove what he was saying, that he was curing AIDS. He actually brought in close to over 100 people who said that he cured them of AIDS. He had what he was doing. He said that if you would take the mucus out of the body, he says everything has to deal with mucus, and he would take the mucus out of the body, and essentially he would destroy AIDS through diet. Without the mucus, there can be no AIDS. He would clean the body out of mucus. Yeah, he cured AIDS, and also he preached a vegetarian diet. I'm not too sure on that, but I know he wasn't against veganism. But you saw Thanos do the same thing. The reason for the snap was because there was no balance in the universe, and he showed his planet that was overpopulated and that was being destroyed because there was no balance, and his planet was eventually destroyed through overpopulation. And Thanos didn't want that to happen to the universe. So he said he would destroy half of it so that there could be balance. And Thanos then after the snap, he said he wanted to sit and enjoy and look at the sun. He actually had a planet lined up, which wound up being a planet of vegetation. Yeah. So look, that you saw an aspect of Dr. Sabi. Dr. Sabi passed maybe a few years ago, doing while this movie was being shot. So that was Dr. Sabi speaking. Remember when we all are more than just our bodies. We're frequencies as well. We're vessels. We can log on to any frequency that we want. This is another thing when we're watching these movies, the creators, they're logged onto a frequency too. They're getting information from other beings. That it could be God. God could be speaking through them in the movie, or they can be talking through the opposing force. So what you saw in this, what I saw in this movie was the tale. This was written through the hands of Satan, God's opposing force. And the magic that they did in this movie, they had everyone rooting against God. Thanos. Anything that comes from the sky, you're going to despise. You're going to hate. You're going to hate it. You're going to fear it. Remember, this is one thing you need to understand. In the Bible, God has destroyed the earth before. A few times. Was God wrong when he did it? He had to do it. He said that there was no balance. This is no difference than what Thanos did. There's no difference. There's no difference. Now, Dr. Sabi was pretty much that was the thing with Sabi being put into this movie like that with the that was no coincidence. And on top of that, Thanos is on the planet eating vegetation. An alkaline diet. Yeah. So, those are ancestors speaking. They have a way. Remember, you can't destroy God. He's going to get his message through. It may not be pretty, but you have the eyes to see it, you'll see it. That goes for the opposing force too. They're both powerful. They're both powerful. So so keep that in mind. And also all of these characters in the movie were playing different aspects of God or his opposing force, Satan. Every single one of them at any given time. So before you make up your mind on who you are rooting for in that movie, you need to be very careful of what you are subconsciously giving to yourself. What commands are you giving to yourself? God is real, people. He's within all of us. I'll cut this short. We'll talk about this later. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment and tell me what you think. And we'll do a part 3 on this. Welcome. I'm God Frequency, and good day.